lifestyle. So I don't know who poses these questions, but I don't think it's helpful to us to continue to perpetuate questions that somehow suggest that somehow GLBT is a lifestyle.
Yeah, those questions are, we actually have that same issue. And the Gill Foundation is taking the lead in trying to get Gallup to change those questions, the wording of those questions. It's really hard. We'd like them to stop using homosexual as well and say gay. But they're just really recalcitrant about, we've been asking this question the same way since the 70s. So in the longer document that we have that this is based on, we have a bunch of footnotes that say, we're sorry we're using this language. But we're trying to be accurate in terms of reporting facts.
Hi, thanks so much for coming today and organizing this conference. I had a question about the numbers on the number of LGBT and T people. Where do those numbers come from?
They come from the Williams Institute, which is it's an institute located at the UCLA School of Law, and it's kind of an interdisciplinary place because they have a demographer on staff, even though it's a law school. They have a demographer and an economist, and they really review all of the research around the United States. Brad Sears heads that up, and he and I actually designed this presentation together and gave it together the first time. And Brad says that people always ask me, what did you do with the other 14 million gay people? It's just, basically Brad's explanation is that it was an early example of messaging for the movement that really took off. That in the Kinsey studies, they came out with higher numbers for a variety of reasons. This was like in the 50s, I guess. And then early gay and lesbian advocates kind of rounded up to 10%, used the 1 in 10 language. But consistently, large national data sets all come out between 3 and 5% of people identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. And only 7% ever say that they'd ever had sex with someone of the same sex. So we find the Williams, they're kind of like a sister organization to us, and we find their stuff really credible, so that's what we use.
Follow-up question statement. Would you agree that those numbers are probably higher since they're asking people to self-identify?
It just depends on what you use as the basis. I mean, you could use 7% if you want to use 7% for people who have had sex with someone of the same sex, but but may or may not identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. I personally think, as a movement, we're trying to serve the people who will admit they're part of us. That's actually a little controversial. There are people who believe that we should be serving anyone with these characteristics, whether they want to admit it or not.
The statistics about adopted children of gay or lesbian couples living in poverty were quite astounding, and I want to know if there's any deeper research into the reason why we're out of proportion there in terms of children living in poverty.
If you want to give me a card or something later, I can send you the report that's based on. It's actually much worse when you get, I had to cut the presentation back a little bit, but it's amazing when you add race too. The poverty rates go way up for people like people who are African American and LGBT and raising kids. Essentially it has to do, I think, with a lot of the things that are really coming out in the marriage debates about not having survivor benefits when your spouse dies, like for Social Security, or not being able to get health care through a job. There's just a ton of our basic social safety net that relies on marriage, that keys on marriage, that gay people don't have the ability to access. And then also that we have some lower education rates in some cases, and discrimination on the job.